So we are done with the first session and we're moving on to start with the second session in as much as our speaker is already in. So uh, we were instructed, sir, to we just proceed even with Ma'am Soraya not around yet. I think
Okay.
she's experiencing problem about her internet connection, but she will be joining us in a while, sir. In the
Okay.
meantime, we all welcome you to Tito Baguio. Welcome to the Philippines, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
You're like a Filipino.
Uh,
Are you?
so no, I am actually adopted from Korea, but
Korean.
I spent a couple months
Yes.
in La Trinidad with Soraya, on Soraya,
Oh,
a few years ago, helping out at her school.
oh,
So
okay, sir.
yeah, that's
So
how I met her.
yes, sir. So basically, you're not new in our place. It's virtually you are with us virtually.
Yes, I would love to spend more time with you
Yes.
physically in person as well. It's I definitely want to come back at some point.
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy of the background. It's Mom Sor is supposed to be the one to introduce you.
It's
So,
totally fine.
yeah. So, may we just proceed to the session, sir? So,
Yes.
time is already up. So, sir,
Perfect.
our fellow teachers, may we welcome to the next session, Sir George Jeffrey George, all the way from the United States of America.
America. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So the session is yours, sir.
Great. So to give you just a very brief bio, um, I met Soraya, Mom Soraya, at Vanderbilt University, Peabody College, while I was earning my master's degree in international education policy and management. Um, I have I taught English abroad for a number of years. Then I went and got my master's degree. Then I worked in education technology for a couple of years with Adobe and edX. I don't know if you've heard of those two organizations before, but um, Adobe is the big software company that's all about creativity and bringing graphic design tools to students. And then um, edX is trying to put all sorts of Harvard, Ivy League, top university courses online for free for everyone in the world to access. So you might have seen those, or if not, check it out. It's at edx.org. Um, but since then, I actually left both those organizations because my passion really is in the classroom. So that's where I want to be. I went back to teach middle school mathematics uh, about 3 years ago. And so now I've been doing STEAM programs and math classes. STEAM being science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. So we want to put the art back into it. Um, so today I wanted to just kind of come back to some of the basics, things that I'm thinking about right now, because with everyone moving online to online education, there is so much, at least we are all distance learning here in San Francisco, where all of our students, they don't have access to the same resources. They don't have access to the support. They don't have access to their special education teacher, or to me, um, or to the counselors, or any of the other people who help them on a day-to-day basis. So it's important for them to come back to realize, well, this is a great time to build agency. Um, I want them to develop the mental routines to be able to still go off and be able to pursue their own learning through any sort of challenge that they may face, and to realize that their education and their ability to ask good questions and their ability to try to find those answers is what's going to help them get through when they actually start applying their education to solve problems on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to take you through a really quick activity as an example. So you don't have to do, you can kind of just follow along. I'm going to share my screen with the slides that I have prepared. I sent these to Mom Soraya, so if you would like, she can share this with you as well. I have used this with my classes, and I continue to. So this, would you be able to enable my screen sharing so that I can share my slides?
Yeah, yes, sir. Already enabled, sir.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So the routines that I'm going to walk through come out of Harvard University. It comes out of their Project Zero. They're all about making learning and making thinking visible and to analyze complexities. So it starts very simple and it gets pretty complex very quickly. So, and it can be for anything. The whole point is that you can take any object in your house, and that is a very valid object to go deep, to engage in deep inquiry with. I think the best way, again, is just to do examples. So I'm going to go to slide 1. I want, if you are in your house or anything like that, if you have something to write with, or if you want to follow along. So find an object anywhere, just any object that's just lying around that you are interested in taking a closer look at, kind of like a scientific closer look at. And it will be very helpful if you actually have that object in front of you. And if you don't, you can kind of follow along with me, I suppose. But don't take my object if you don't want. I'm going to probably choose this one. It is a little pen that I got from some event, some corporate event that I went to that says, I think it's Deloitte, but it's one of those stylus giveaway pens. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're first just going to write down what the object is in like a word or phrase. And then we're going to analyze all the different parts of the object. So if you have your own object, you're just going to write down, I'm going to go to the next. This is like, everyone's seen diagrams before of different types of machines or objects. If you've ever seen the book, How Things Work, or you've ever taken anything apart like a TV or something really small like a stapler, right? So get any object you can, and we're going to just look really closely. I'm going to take maybe 3 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes to write down every part of your object. And you're just going to write it down on a piece of paper, anything, right next to you. This is what I had my students do because I want them to realize that they can, everything is a valuable, it can be used to further their education. So this pen, for example. So, okay, just go ahead and take maybe 3 minutes, and we will come back in about 3 minutes. If you're a visual thinker, I really encourage you to draw different parts as well. Notice what material it's made out of. Yeah, it's engraved on there. Okay, so would anybody like to share where their object was? It's okay if you prefer not to, but I just want to open up the floor to anybody. Oh, Brenda, that's great. If you tried to draw though, that's all. That's all. It's right. It's really not about the quality of the drawing. It's about making connections, right? Because if you think about our brains, the majority of our brain is committed to like visual processing, and so looking very closely at things and trying to connect that. I mean, there's a reason why historically all the best scientists were also really good artists, right? So, and it's just something that we don't really think about too often, but it's just practice. And it's also a great opportunity. Even if it's a rudimentary drawing, you will make that connection, right? So if you're making the connection, that's what's helpful. So if you understand what it is, I don't need to understand what your drawing is, but if you understand what it is later on, it's going to be helpful, right? If you've made a mind map before, you know how you make like, so let me just show what I got. So I made a list, and then I started to draw them, and then I started to list what they were made out of, like rubber material. Uh, I took note of the fact that the words on this pen are Deloitte Manufacturing, and it's actually engraved on there. So it's actually, they used some machine to actually, with very good precision, carve out these letters, right? So even thinking about the machine that you would need to do that, it'd probably be a laser cutter or something along those lines, something very like an engraver, um, very complicated. If you think about, this is the perfect cylinder that has been created. It's two cylinders that have been embedded in each other for this to fit into the other aspect. This is not just even a cylinder, it's a complex shape for this tip. The tip is a complex shape, right? Um, if I wanted to take it apart, this holds, there's a double-edged piece, another nub, this falls in, replaceable ink, uh, all of it. So there's a spring here, there's no spring. If there's a spring inside the clicker, right? So when you really break it apart, there's so many aspects of this one object that I kind of just take for granted, right? And then it has to be assembled somehow. So that's the parts. You analyze all the parts, you're drawing it, and you're just now you're getting a heightened awareness of all the objects around you. And you're getting a greater appreciation for all the different things that have to happen to make something like this. The next one, I like it. Ami said I have a big hamburger shape. It's colorful, made of cloth and foam with plastic compartments for CDs and things like that. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing, right? So Bluetooth portable mini speaker made of plastic and metal. There's so much. And if you take apart that speaker, you'd be surprised. It's very complex, but it's also much simpler than you probably ever gave it credit for, too. I took apart a flashlight the other day, and I thought it'd be very complex, but it's actually much simpler, right? Yeah, flash drive, all of these things that so how do we make these things, right? These are products that now we analyze the purpose. The next step is, what is the purpose of each part of your object? So it goes from just simply outlining the pieces, which every student should be able to do. I've never had a student who was not able to take an object and analyze the parts of it. Then we get into the purposes. What is the purpose of each part, right, of the object? So I'm going to walk you. So take a few more minutes. So you have your parts laid out. Take a few more minutes and try to outline the purpose of each of the parts on your pen. Okay? Try to outline the purpose. All right. So I love how you're starting to share some of these things, right? I love the electric guitar. The electric guitar is an amazing object. You could go so far with a lot. I can see all the connections for these. All of your objects are amazing. Even analyzing the lines on the page of your notebook. That's so right. Nice. Wow. Okay. Fan. Which is nice. Uh-huh. So I love how everyone's showing that they have a lot of the things have multiple purposes. Yeah. They clearly had users in mind when they designed them, right? Uh, the, yep. You're highlighting the sturdiness, you're highlighting all of it. Great. Okay. So in the purposes, this is where you can do a lot of different things. For example, I love the electric guitar because sound waves, you can take that. If you start thinking about where this can go, then you can go into the science, right? Science, you can get into sound waves. You can get into, in math, you can do waves. You can do sine and cosine waves. You can do, you can get into rates of like beats per minute. You can get into the math behind music. You can get to the purpose of music. All of these things. Bluetooth speakers, you can basically describe why they even created these things to begin with, right? You can even get into how you can get back into signals, for instance, with Bluetooth. Frequency, there's a lot of physics in there, right? The design of it all. Tissues used for hygienic purposes. Right now, you can even talk about how people have been hoarding tissue and why that might be. You can get into psychology with that, right? So with these very simple things, we're going to enter the next part. The next part, depending on what subject you really want to focus on, as a math teacher, I try to make sure that they always highlight the mathematical complexity of it, right? But I put out a few different questions to analyze the complexity of these objects. So for me, I will go ahead. Let's just take a few more, like maybe 2 more minutes, analyze the complexity. What makes these complex? Your object. What is very complex about your object? You can think about how just a mathematical concept like calculating the volume, right, of a complex shape or of a cylinder, right? Or making sure that this cylinder will even fit inside that cylinder, right? You can think about that. You can think about the production of your object and how that is probably complex. Like, was this assembled by hand? Was it assembled by machine? Was it partially by hand, partially by machine? Do things come together easily, or do they need to be broken apart? If they assembled once, is that the only thing, right? So analyze the complexity of your object. You can make a flow chart for this, maybe talking about like where your object even came from. Why did someone create your object in the first place? And then go through the whole supply chain about how it got into your possession. Mm. Mm. All right. Mm. Yeah. So I love this, the outlining it. I'm loving how I'm seeing everybody has a different approach to how they think. Some people put it in lists. Some people just make an order. Some people describe it in a paragraph. Yeah. Some people are breaking it apart piece by piece by piece. Yeah, describing the dependencies, what these objects are dependent on for them to work. Yeah, it's what's amazing is I've done this with my students so many different times in so many different classes, and every single time I get unique solutions. There are unique there they come up with new things, they come up with new drawings. It's very important to be organized. I agree with that. What I will say is also students organize their thinking. If you give students the opportunity to organize their thinking, how that makes sense to them, they create kind of flowcharts or things naturally. They might do word bubbles, like mind maps, where you put something in the middle, like you put your pen, circle it in the middle, and then they go all over the place, right? And they say, oh, there's a connection, and they draw an arrow, and they draw other things. What I love about this is you get to see how students think and how students break down problems and how students break down complex ideas. So, and what you see is there's high levels of engagement because it's very accessible, right? You don't have to have very high levels of of academic content knowledge necessarily to start to break apart very complex ideas. And this can be a way to engage students again who may not be engaged initially, right? They can take a deep interest in something. So this is just one of the mental routines. I shared a whole PDF from Harvard that was about that was basically about you can take parts, purposes, and complexities around objects primarily. There's also thought processes around people, right? So it's how in exploring interconnectedness between people, right? Yes. There's the PDF. If you want to read through it, they give you examples, they give you preloaded questions, they give you all of it. So it's a really great process. This, even with this, you can get into the fact that it was all for the purpose of advertising, and you can get into how economics work and how businesses work, and how Deloitte is actually an international, a multinational company and this is Deloitte Manufacturing. I didn't even know Deloitte made things, but because I knew they were consulting, they're accounting, they do all sorts of stuff, but apparently they do manufacturing as well. And the point of this was to give these away to clients, to potential clients. And so therefore this little swag, which is, you can talk about how much money they spent on this versus how much money they're going to get from that potential client. And then you can talk about how business works. You can talk about how capitalism works and economics work and everything as well. So depending on your subject, your task, your content standard, you can kind of choose. Like I left it open to you for any object, but if I really wanted to get into geometry, I could say, okay, find an object with some very interesting shapes. Find me an object with circular shapes or with cylinders and things like that. And then we can start with that. They can analyze it. And then the rest of the class, they can be calculating the volume of, say, this disc-shaped Jabra. And if you really wanted, you could start with simple volume of cylinders, and then you can quickly get into volume with calculating with calculus even, right? Even within this, you could start with just a circle, and you could start by breaking it up into little slices, and then you can start getting into calculus, right? So even within your subject, if you wanted to analyze the environment and sustainability and farming and things like that, you can start with a fruit or vegetable. And then you can just talk about the production process for that, right? So that would be a way to spin off and actually target it to your specific subject or your specific class as well, as you can limit the amount of objects that you want them to choose from. But if you want them, this is like a really great activity for if you want them to like make a poster where they have to have public show of work, then they do drawings and descriptions right next to each other as well. Yeah, so I'm continuing to explore the possibilities of these mental routines. But as long as they have these routines where they say, okay, you give them a word problem in the future. They say, okay, cool. First part, I'm going to analyze the parts of the word problem. Then I'm going to analyze the purpose of this word problem. What are they asking me for? Okay, what makes this word problem complex? The same exact mental routine can be applied to so many different topics, subjects, everything. And that's how they're so powerful, because they're so simple, but you can apply them to so many different situations. Yes. Yes. Is it Rosanna or Rosanna? Rosanna? Is it Rosanna?
It's Rosanna.
Oh, yeah, Rosanna. Yeah, that's a great point. With this pandemic, it's an incredibly powerful tool for using for this. Yes. Right? Then they can combine graphs. They can do diagrams. They can show how people spread this around the world. They can track it. It's like a really powerful tool. Yeah, absolutely. To discuss how we're connected as a global society too. So I believe that I was supposed to go on for maybe 30 to 40 minutes and then to open it up to questions for you all. Is that still the agenda?
Hi, Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yay, Soraya.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
Right. Good to see you too. Yes, the agenda would be like that. We have actually two panelists who would be leading us into insights and questions. We have Rosanna and Remedios from Remy also. So if we're are we set for the question and answer portion, or we still have some things to cover?
I will say that I like Elma's talk at the end that cell phone is not just a way to communicate, and it's not just a way to, it's not only to capture memories, but it's an incredibly valuable learning tool. Yeah, it's, you can do something where you just say, hey class, go outside. It doesn't have to be a physical object. It can be go outside and take a photo of something outside that you want to analyze and come back in and use that as an object or something for them to learn. It doesn't have to be physical. They don't have to hold it. They can have just like observed it and taken a photo of it, right? And if it's something that they really want to analyze, it's like too big. Say it's a windmill or something, or a whole row of like agriculture, right? An entire plot of land. They can analyze those by taking a photo. So that's a way to bring things that are too big, really big into your class, or really small into your class and things. Yeah, it's really that's a great point. I let them use technology in my class all the time. So would we like questions at this point?
All right. Okay. So may we have any of our panelists, either Ma'am Rosanna or Ma'am Remy, start?
Yes, Sir Jeff. Shall we call you Sir Jeff?
Sure. I am going to stop sharing my. Jeff is fine.
Yes, the slide share is still on.
I'm going to turn it off, and then if you'd like, you can either have speaker view where the person who's talking, and it'll probably come back to me, or you can pin my video. Your choice.
Yes. That would be nice. Okay. So you led us into a very interactive activity, which shows how each object has purpose,
Mm-hmm.
that it has different parts, and the different parts may be complex, but by breaking down the different parts of that object, the complexity of that object becomes simple. And this is really very useful in leading our learners to understand complex things, as I said earlier, just like this pandemic. Um, my concern is on how to use this strategy when it comes to online learning. We understand that not all learners have that sense of responsibility and um, the maturity to tackle this kind of strategy, or to have this kind of learning system. So in short, we will be engaging the parents as well,
Mm-hmm.
and there will be some sort of discord between the learner and the parent in terms of perspective, right? They might have some generational gap. So how do we teach both learner and parent in this way?
Mm. Yeah, thank you for that question. It's one that we are working through as well. Um, it's there's really no way to have a set answer to that question. Um, what's very important to think about uh, is to get administrators involved as well, to think about the best ways to continually communicate. So right now, we're towards the end of our school year, right? So for us, if we have not put the time in to communicate with parents on a regular basis about their students' learning, and not just when they're acting up or when they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? A lot of the time we reach out to parents only when there are concerns. And what this really highlights is that we need to be reaching out to parents as partners in their students' learning early and consistently. And so I'm just going to highlight a couple things that have been very helpful for my school, for instance. And what's very clear is we have at our 6th grade level, they have basically 2 teachers, and each of those teachers teach 2 subjects. And so therefore they limit the interactions that they have with a number of different people. So they have very trusting relationships, at least with those two teachers, right? At the 7th and 8th grade level, students are distributed across a whole variety of teachers, right? And teachers don't share the same students and all these types of things. And the relationship quality goes way down when that happens, right? So this highlights the need for us to think about how we completely change the structures of our school in some way to allow to like prioritize relationships. Because if you have strong relationships, then any of these crises that emerge that we can't even predict, then the baseline is that we will be communicating with each other. As opposed to right now, we're trying to convince people of things, and it's sort of too late in some ways. Now, I'm taking certain strategies to try to reach out to parents and parents and students more often. I'm doing pretty much everything you can think of. I'm texting them on a regular basis. I've sent text to I've built out a website to allow for them to access the assignments. I've uploaded every assignment to Google Classroom and sent regular updates through the stream. I'm putting out, tutorials on Instagram and TikTok, because I know that that's where my students are and maybe they'll access those materials. I mean, but again, this is not the expectation for all teachers. This is not, hasn't even been all that successful. What is very successful, though, I've seen it in the 6th grade level. They have more students signing on to the online sessions. They have more students reaching out to them for help because they have much better relationships with those students, right? But that's because the school was set up for that already. So it's important to think about. This is a great time right now to reflect and think about what we need to do in our schools to do better going forward, and to be totally forgiving of ourselves right now, right? I know that as teachers, we want to do more right now, but we have to also recognize that just rushing forward right now and just doing things that we feel like we've always done, it's going to cause a lot of frustration because this isn't normal. This isn't the same. And so we have to maybe take a step back and be kind to ourselves, kind to our students, kind to our parents, and realize that we kind of all have to come together and have a real conversation about why we need to invest in our education still going forward.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sir Jeff. And really, your conclusive, your last sentence, I guess, is supports the earlier statement that you said in your introduction, that let's not think about how complex is the world, but more on the emphasizing the ability of our learners to think, the ability of our learners to simplify complex things, and the ability of our learners to ask questions. Going back to the basics, I think, is the call of the day. Thank you.
One thing that I like to always emphasize, though, and I like to think about is it student driven? Because at the end of their education process, their educational journey, whether they go to college or beyond, or just go through high school or wherever, right? We want them to feel like they are capable of continuing to like explore, to learn, to ask questions, and to be self-driven in that process. We don't want them to feel like they need to wait for answers and to just be dependent on others to provide them with knowledge. They are already so smart. You know, I tell my students all the time, I go, think of every single species on the planet. You are smarter than the like 99.99999% of them. So if you think you are not smart, that is not true, right? We are other animals, and we exist within a larger system, and we have figured out ways to make sense of the world that no other creature has been able to do yet, right? So you are already a head start. You're way ahead. And then whenever I'm teaching math, I focus on the fact that math has been developed over 5,000 years. It's not like, how are they supposed to just understand math in a day when it's taken thousands and thousands and thousands of years of debate and disagreement to come to these conclusions that we now have, right? So it's still emerging. It's still a subject that lives. It's a living subject. It's not something that's just in a textbook for them to just accept. That was something that was worked for. That was something that, and they are standing on the shoulders of intellectual giants, right? So I make sure that I try to provide context on that front. So, you know, there are plenty, if they think about all the people in the world who have existed throughout human history, they are living in a world that's more advanced than any time before, right? So, yeah.
Thank you. We'd like to hear also from another panelist. We have Ma'am Remy. Please go ahead. Are you in? Are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much, sir. So this is a scientific way of design. What new here is the combination of the old and the new. It includes the human factor, like the emotions, the personal experiences. Now, there are four kinds of personality among our learners or among in any group, which we have the outgoing or the optimistic, or we call them the popular. We have also the born leader or the confident. And then we have those who are deep and organized, and then those who are easygoing or the adaptable. What is the easiest way to deal with these pupils where, for example, when they are presenting in a group, because we use the explicit way of teaching wherein learners will undergo small group and big group activities in sharing their experiences, because this is a very good way of getting the experiences of the individuals in their group. What is the best way to deal with these different kinds of group, the different personalities, sir?
Yeah. So that is a very complicated question, and every set of students. Sorry, would you mind muting because I'm hearing myself back and it's kind of a little disorienting. Yes, thank you. uh, so yeah, that's a huge question, right? That's a huge challenge. I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't experience these similar challenges. Um, what I will say is that the more present that we are in the class, I love how you highlight there are different personalities, different strengths of students. If we can hold that, right? We have to hold, if we can hold that at the center, where we're really looking for the strengths and the assets that our students bring to the classroom, and the things that they are good at, and the things that they are confident in, and we can work to build the other aspects up as well, right? Then if we're more present and we're always looking for the positive and not so much not focusing on some of the smaller things, or like the more negative things that can really distract us and others, our negativity bias is so strong. We have to really be mindful of that. And so what I love is, you know, whether it's I call it, I've been doing designing group work and complex instruction with mathematics, and what we call this is status issues. And what we oftentimes realize is that certain students, through for a variety of reasons, whether they it could be so, I'm not going to go through a lot of them, right? But there are so many reasons why some students might actually be more extroverted than other students, because they might have been more supported. They might have more conversations with their parents at the dinner table. They might have a stronger vocabulary because they were read to more as a child, and things like this, like all sorts of reasons why there's a current existing status gap. And people then have internalized messages about their own learning. And what we as teachers can do, and I've seen it work so many times, is we can just go to students who we feel are less confident, but if they do like anything that's pretty actually excellent in what you're looking very closely for their work that they have done very well, and it's called a little status boost. And you really just say, oh, I love that question, I love that diagram, I love that. And the more diverse criteria that you can bring in, as you said, there are different strengths, there are different skill sets of different students. The more that you hold all of those wide-ranging options for showing brilliance and intelligence and being smart in your class, and you can give them credit for that, you can give them sort of acknowledgement for any of those forms of intelligence, they're more likely to take risks, they're more likely to participate, going forward. What I really emphasize in all group work that I do is I make sure that we say, I really emphasize the step up, step back norm. So I want the students who talk a lot to be mindful of that. I want them to try to have like a self-check and say, oh, I've been talking this whole class. I need to take a step back and not talk for the rest of the class. As teachers, we need to prompt them. You know, a lot of the time we want to move the class forward, so we just like let them keep talking. Well, we need to also say, hey, okay, hey, Jacob, you know, that's just the first name that came to my head because there's a student of mine who always loves saying the answer first. I'm just like, Jacob, let's practice our step back norm today. And if it's a norm that the class has kind of come up with, then it's not like you're attacking that person, that student, or you're shutting that student down. We're just saying, hey, let's practice let's just work on our norm. This is a great time to work on our norm of step up, step back. And then if someone else steps up, you give them a lot of credit for stepping up, right? And you give that student credit for stepping back. What we realize in the long term is that we are facing incredibly challenging global issues. Like take coronavirus, take COVID-19, this pandemic as an issue. We need as many voices, the diversity of perspectives, the diversity of solutions to be brought into the conversation so that we can find the right solution for everyone. If it's the same people talking every single time, we will not get that diversity of perspective that we need to be able to address some of these issues, right? So the biggest thing that I worry about is what I'm missing out on in my students when certain students talk the entire time. I'm missing out on learning about all of the other strengths that the other students have. One expert, you know, she says it, you know, I was listening to Lani Guigné. She's actually a Harvard law professor, and she was talking, and she said, you know, if John gets if he gets 60-70% of the exam right, and like Sarah gets the other 30% right, well, I want to hire both of them because Sarah clearly understands the 30% that John doesn't get, right? I'm not going to hire two Johns that have 70%, the same 70%, because then you have the same blind spot. You want to diversify to make sure that you can like address those blind spots. And so that's the value of group work. And if you can continually highlight these examples, you know, like Steve Jobs he was not an engineer. He was like an artist, a graphic designer, and really had like a great eye for user experience. Steve Wozniak, now he was the coder, he was the engineer. You don't have Apple without the combination of both. Like Steve Jobs is the extrovert, Steve Wozniak is the introvert, right? Recognizing all of the different ways that people bring value to the class is huge, is so important.
And no learner is left behind. So we also learn from our learners and not they learning from us. We also learn from everybody and also from the environment where we are teaching. So thank you, sir. It was very clear and very understandable. Thank you. God bless, sir.
I agree.
Thank you to our panelists. They raised very important insights on learning and teaching, and also how this applies to the situation we are now. And their questions have deepened our conversation. May we hear from Jovi on the chat box? Jovi Lynn. Jovi.
Okay, ma'am, we have here now two questions from the chat box from Sir Franklin Gabriel. Number one is, how do we manage a class of mixed mental capabilities, say extremely challenged to extremely gifted?
Yeah, I agree. This is a very, very complex topic. Again, the way my approach has always been trying to form really strong community within my classrooms so that people recognize that it's not just about their own education. It's about that we will all be better off if everybody gets a very high level education, because then we can work together when we're adults. So one of the stories that I love to tell is, or one of the examples is, we all have a stake in each other's education, because you never know who is going to be the farming your food, who's going to be putting the food on your table, basically. We never know who's going to be the person, if you get sick, who might be in the hospital, who's either the nurse or the doctor or anyone like that in the future, who's going to be helping you get healthy. We don't know who it is going to be who's going to be helping to create new economic opportunities in our area. And if like they feel a really strong connection, if we can keep these strong connections, they're more likely to consider bringing that economic success back to this community. For all, and like if we have more strong connections with the people that we're working with, we're more likely to include them in business design. If we have you never know. I was listening to, so I do a lot. I go to a lot of PDs. I talk to a lot of experts, because that's who I am. I really care about continuing to advance my own practice. This guy named Ron Berger, he has been working in the same school district in Massachusetts. It's a small town, but he has basically educated probably 90%, like, because it's a very small town, very small. It's like a one school elementary school, but he's educated every kid who's come through that town for the past 30 years. And he has, like, his wife, for instance, had a stroke. Well, who shows up? One of his former students was the paramedic. And then, so it's just like, you never know when you're going to see them again, how you're going to interact with them. So we have a long-term stake in each other's success. So that if I try to build that in, I try to make, because then people are like, okay, I need to help this student learn too. It's not, I need to help them do it for themselves. And then I, as a teacher, and as teachers, we know this. A lot of the time, we don't even know much about a topic. Sometimes, it happens. We don't know everything we would like to know about a topic when we go in to teach it the first time. But then when we teach it to another person, well, that's when we start to really master it. That's when we start to become experts. So when you ask students to actually help other students as well, and help them do it for themselves, then it's really valuable. One last point about this is I am very big into project-based learning. So one of the big projects I did was about having students start their own businesses, right? So, and there are so many students who are academically very gifted, but when they were coming up for business ideas, like, the other students who they don't normally look to as leaders in the class took the lead, because they were like, oh, well, my parents own a restaurant down the street. Why don't we start like an agua fresca business or something like that? It's very simple. We can make it happen. And they're like, okay, cool. Another person owned a bakery. So they were saying, okay, well, why don't we all learn how to like bake and bake some goods at my parents' shop and things like that. So then they were able to, you're basically able to take you're able to give them the leadership opportunity in some ways, but naturally when you make the learning experience more authentic. Because if we give if I give the same math problems every year, then it's the same students who are going to excel. It's the students who are already advanced coming into my class who are going to take the lead. But if I change up the type of project that we're doing and open up that opportunity for other people with other expertise to take a lead, then it changes the whole kind of locus of power and power dynamics in the classroom. Sorry, I might have rambled too much, but I hope that answered the question. partially. There's no simple answer to questions like that, I know.
Do we have others? Asun? Are there other insights and questions in the chat box?
Ma'am, we still have one, ma'am. From
Alright.
Ma'am Kathleen A. Palome. It says here, sir, is there such thing as online or virtual classrooms dynamics? If yes, how can we go about it?
It's hard to say because I don't really have a great understanding of the context, right? So in your context, I don't know the percentage of students that have stable internet access. I don't really understand how many students. Like a lot of you might have varying numbers of students in your classes that you're responsible for, right? So it's really hard for me to offer what I do in my classes because given my context, I have about 25 to 30 students show up per session, which allows me to maybe do breakout rooms through Zoom. Oftentimes I'll put the assignment out in advance so that they can present their work, and I will email a certain students who they submitted through the classroom and I really like their work, so I really want to have them present their work to the class and ask them if that's okay. Sometimes I do question and answer style things. The other day I did a geometry. I mean, you just have to do. You have to. There's no real way because I don't know the students either in your class. You have that becomes. So I don't. There's no. I don't actually have a really good answer for that. I can offer. You're gonna want to communicate through multiple channels. Is really the most important thing, and having a clear agenda is always helpful, right? So having a clear agenda for your sessions, front loading it and trying to put the assignment out there so you can collect student work in advance so you can reference that could be very helpful. And every group is a little bit different. I have some very talkative groups and I have some very quiet groups, and so it's important to recognize the differences there too.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was not very helpful.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your insights and for the questions that were raised in the chat box. There are still a lot of insights there. We can get through that later on. As we wind down, we'd like to thank you, Jeff, for allowing us to, for being with us, today. You have shared very important points, not only about the content of the topic itself, but how the power of mental routine can be very helpful at this situation. So there are three things or lessons that we get, or major highlights that we get from the power of mental routine, not only for the classroom, but first, you gave us that space for us to gain a deeper understanding of how this crisis is going on by analyzing the complexity of things and breaking it down. That capacity to understand is helpful in for us to go through this kind of crisis that we are going. And the second, you have emphasized the importance of the diversity of perspectives, not only getting from one lens, not only your lens as a teacher, but the diverse perspectives from everyone in the entire system will help us look at things and make decisions, especially as we prepare for opening of classes and that stuff. And the third that you have emphasized is deepening the relationship, the interconnectedness with parents and relationship with the students in a time of crisis like this is very important. And that actually connects you with the first speaker, Dimitri from Canada, who also emphasized on communication, the communication among parents, learners, and every stakeholder is very important in all of this crisis that we're all going through. So thank you very much, Jeff. It was very wonderful of you to be part of our learning session today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I hope everyone is able to find some solution that they feel really happy with. So like I just really want to emphasize, if you have any successes during this time, like really celebrate them. Really, I don't know, it's awesome. Like you are keeping everything going. It's Teacher Appreciation Week, so like I think that's right this week. So I appreciate you all so much. Like 300 teachers in a room. This is powerful. You're gonna have so much impact to these next school year and forever. And I really am so grateful that you've invited me here to be with you all. And if you'd like, yeah, if you ever want to connect, Soraya has Soraya has my information. I also, like I said, I'm putting out some ideas and stuff like that. I can share website. I can share any of that. I can share my learning that I'm doing even on TikTok and stuff like that. Whatever you choose, just let me know.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Yes, we'd share. If there are those schools who would like to invite you, I can share your contact and they can engage with you through Zoom or any other platforms for whatever professional development they're into. See, Jeff has been also promoting peer teaching. So when he was job shadowing me at the Regional Science High School, he introduced one of the things that he would like to see among our teachers, which is doing peer teaching. Thank you so much, Jeff, for the 1 hour and 10 minutes of being with us. And good evening to you all. Uh, I hope you stay safe as well as we are all keeping ourselves staying safe here. Thank you so much. To all our participants, thank you very much. Your insights in the chat box are very much appreciated. Thank you very much. The 300 plus learners, participants from all over. Thank you so much for each one is very much motivated to learn while we are all in this kind of crisis. To our very engaging panelists, thank you for your time also. That's Ma'am Rosana and Ma'am Ma'am Kinyo, who is with us also. Maraming salamat. By Wednesday, we'd like to promote another webinar which is for learners. We can get into it as observers. This is called the Battled Voices, the voices from our learners. Thank you, everyone. Keep safe and have a good day. Hi, Jeff.
Soraya, I would love to also connect you with a really good friend of mine who has very deep roots with the Baguio area and stuff like that, and so she would love to. Yeah, she'd love to connect as well.
Yes, sure. Is she teaching also?
Yep, she is a teacher. She is a teacher who she does a lot of work with bringing social emotional learning into the classroom and a lot of identity, helping students really form their identities. So I thought that could be valuable and powerful too.
Right.
I'll
please
connect you. I'll connect you offline.
Anytime. Yes.
Excellent.
And maybe we can have another webinar with her on social emotional learning.
Perfect. That would be. I think she'd love to do that.
Yes. Thank you so much. So how are you? How are you doing?
Day by day, I'm healthy. My family's healthy, so I'm very grateful for everything, and I'm very grateful for the students who continue to really inspire me in some ways. Right, they're going through so many challenges, but then still committing to their learning. So, it's been good.
Thank you.
Yeah, but so I'd love to catch up with you all later, but I am going to go and have dinner and stuff like that. So, but I would really thank you again for inviting me here. It was a great offer. It was great experience.
Yeah, me too. And of course, from everyone here, right? I just had power disruption earlier, so I wasn't able to get in on time. I didn't see that coming, but good that we have other alternatives like a mobile phone for that matter.
Okay,
So
sounds good.
stay safe. Yeah, I'll get in touch with you
Okay,
later on on email.
sounds good.
Thank
Take care. Bye.
you. Take care.